What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Another awesome guest this week. We have with us Steve Kamb. He is the owner of Nerd Fitness. He's also the author of Leveling Up Your Life. He's given talks at Google, Facebook, Vanderbilt, and he's been in the game as a coach for a long time and serves a ton of people. And I know he's a wealth of knowledge, and I can't wait to nerd out with him. So, Steve, welcome to the show.
What's up, Brian? Great to see you, man.
Great to see you too. Now, I got to make a concerted effort here not to go down the rabbit hole of Marvel and Tolkien and things like that, because this can go off the rails really fast. So we'll try to keep it to fitness, but I apologize to the audience ahead of time. I make no promises.
I like it. I'm here for it. Let's get weird.
All right, cool. But before we go there, I got to ask, because like I said before we hit the record button, you were probably like the most fun person that I researched, because I always look into everybody before they come on, and you might be the most interesting man in the world depending on your bio. Now, I saw that you spent all of 2011 traveling the world, and I got to ask, because I love asking travelers, what is the best place on earth? Like, best country, best place you've ever been?
My favorite place, and I think it was because it was the start of my around the world trip, but there's this tiny island off the coast of New Zealand, off of Auckland, called Waiheke Island. And for years prior to this, I never really traveled internationally. I spent most of my exploring, or done most of my exploring, virtually in video games or in books. But there was this desktop background that I saw this beautiful bench overlooking the ocean somewhere, and I just had it saved as my background of like, someday, if I can make this whole online fitness nerd thing work, I'm going to travel. And that was kind of like just a daily reminder for me. So I eventually find my way to New Zealand. I'm getting started on this big around the world adventure. I'm scared. And I land in New Zealand, and I hear from somebody like, oh, go check out this island. And on the ferry over to that island, there's this little tiny pamphlet. And I'm looking through the pamphlet and realized that the bench of the photo that I had taken was on this island. So I went and found that bench and sat in it and took photos and said, like, okay, I did it. I took the big leap. I answered the call to adventure and found myself in New Zealand. And to this day, I think that island, it's just wineries. And I stayed in this really cool hostel run by a family, and we all cooked dinner together with other travelers. I couldn't have had a better start to this scary adventure. And I will always have fond memories of that.
That sounds so freaking cool. And New Zealand is definitely on my bucket list, only solely because Rocket Power made like a few episodes on it. And I'm like, that looks like the coolest place in the world. So now we got you giving it the seal of approval. It's like, it's got to happen now.
It's amazing. I was actually, my wife and I went there for our a delayed honeymoon this past year. And a decade later, it still is just stunningly beautiful. And if you drive every half an hour that you drive, you're going to hit a completely different biome and weather and climate. And it's just stunningly, I mean, they filmed Lord of the Rings there. Like, there's a reason why it's as beautiful, it's as beautiful as that movie makes it out to be.
Yeah, and it makes sense, because I know that there's a few other movies that have been filmed there too. Like, if you got that many different landscapes to work with, it's like, it's a one-stop shop.
It's stunning.
That's cool. Can't wait to eventually get out there. Now, in the beginning, when I have a guest on, I love asking about their intro to fitness. And I saw something interesting, and I wanted to ask you about it, because I know that you made a mention on your social media that Iron in the Soul really kind of spoke to you. And I'd love for you to explain a little bit about like what it is and how it impacted you for everybody listening.
Sure. So I stumbled across Henry Rollins's article called Iron in the Soul. This must have been right around when I was starting Nerd Fitness. I wish I had found it earlier, but I started Nerd Fitness, and I bought the domain in 2007, which is like 1,000 years ago in internet land.
Was that through like GoDaddy or something?
Yeah, probably actually. I had to find a friend, because like WordPress wasn't nearly as easy to write for. Anyways, it was right around when I was starting the website and kind of figuring out how I was going to help people that I found Rollins's article about his life growing up and the challenges he faced. He was really scrawny, had no sense of self, got picked on and bullied. And I'm fortunate, I was not bullied in high school, but I certainly was scrawny and weak and had no sense of self. And I got cut from my high school basketball team. And I thought it was because there was like politics involved and the coach didn't like me. And like the reality was like I was just not very good at basketball. But I had come up with this narrative that is like, oh, I'm just not, I need to get strong. So I go to a gym and I start strength training, and over a handful of years start to build confidence in the gym and eventually start to build confidence with myself. And that article just perfectly encapsulates why I think everybody, people of all genders, people of all ages, shapes, sizes, can improve themselves through strength training. And it kind of served as that North Star for me as I was starting Nerd Fitness of how I thought it could help people. Like a strong nerd is a healthy nerd, and a strong person. There's a great quote that Henry says is something like, I've never met a truly strong person that didn't have a sense of confidence or self-confidence. And I think that's absolutely true, and would love for more people to be able to feel that. The challenge, of course, is that gyms can be super intimidating. The online fitness space is full of unrealistic, scantily clad individuals promoting really terrible practices that make you feel awful about yourself and question everything. So I thought Nerd Fitness could be that home for people to get science-based information, supportive help, empathetic community, and give them the courage to, we talk a lot about 20 seconds of courage in Nerd Fitness, but using that 20 seconds of courage to either walk into a gym or try to do their first push-up at home, go for a walk around their block, whatever it may be, like using those things and developing that confidence, because once you start with strength training, it bleeds over to so many other areas of life.
Love that. And I love that 20 seconds of courage. What exactly is that? Is it just like a countdown of like, you got this much time and just do it?
Yeah, so it's actually this obscure quote from this movie that probably very few people saw, but Matt Damon's, I think it was called We Bought a Zoo. I probably watched it.
I've seen that movie.
Yeah, I watched it. I watched it on my around the world travels. On the back of an airplane, it was this little tiny video, and it's Matt Damon literally buys a zoo, and in it he's talking to his kids and how he had met his wife, and he talks about how you don't need to be really, like, you don't need to always be confident, and it's okay to be afraid. You can be terrified before, but like if you can just muster up 20 seconds of courage, then like amazing things can happen. And that has kind of become this rallying cry at Nerd Fitness, where people are using 20 seconds to courage to sign up for their first run their first 5K or do their first Tough Mudder. And it's like, you don't need the courage the entire time. You just need that nudge out of the door, to quote Gandalf the Grey. You need that little nudge out of the door. You need those 20 seconds to like put yourself past that point of no return, where you walk in the door of the gym or you sign up for that 5K. And all of a sudden it's like, well, I'm here. I signed up. I might as well just do the thing. So you can be scared before and you can be terrified after, but just using those 20 seconds of courage for those moments and you really need it can be really, really valuable.
Yeah. And I was going to stack another Gandalf quote on there, but follow your nose is not a good tip when you're going into a gym, depending on which gym.
Very, very true.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know it's like one of like many things that I saw that you're good with the analogies and like the I'm not even sure what the word would be, but I came across one that said the NBA Jam on Fire strategy. So I'm curious exactly what that is, because as a gamer who has played endless amounts of NBA Jam and NFL Street and things like that, I'm all about like the turbo and like the
Sure.
I don't want to take over, but yeah, you explain.
Sure. Well, I, like many people in my 20s, fell in love with the idea of like the optimized life. Like anything that is inconvenient, you either need to delete, remove, eliminate, or delegate and get rid of. And like fell in love with this, like the life needs to be so perfectly optimized, and your routine can then be flawless, and then you'll never miss your workout. And then if your nutrition is dialed in perfectly, and like that works for like the tiniest percentage of really privileged people. I've quickly came to learn that I was optimizing away from and removing most of the things that make life worth living. So now I'm 39. I am married. I have 2 dogs, and last night I didn't get great sleep because I was cleaning up the dishes and stepped in a pile of my dog's throw up that she had thrown up from earlier in the day. It's like, oh, okay, never mind. Not sleeping right now. We need to clean the carpet, and we need to. So this morning was rough. It was not optimized. I totally missed the workout I was supposed to do this morning. And in the past, that would have driven me crazy. I would have said like, "Oh, no, you can't miss your workout." Like there's that famous Jerry Seinfeld quote, and he's talking about writing jokes, but it's just get a calendar and put an X on every day that you do the thing that you're trying to do, and that works flawlessly right up until the day that it doesn't. And when it doesn't, and your streak falls apart, I've had this happen to me. I'm sure listeners have had it happen to them, but you miss one day, and then all of a sudden the idea of building up another 92-day streak or a 37-day streak feels exhausting, and you're just like, I'm out. I once meditated every day for 6 months using one of those meditation apps, and I earned this little badge, and then I missed one day, and I then didn't meditate again for like 4 years because it was too daunting. So instead of this, hey, you have to be perfect and don't break the streak, at Nerd Fitness and with our coaching clients, and we like to think of it instead of an additive method. So you're not trying to be perfect, in which case the only place you can go is down. Instead, we're adding up. We're counting up the number of things. So if you can complete something, let's say, and this is where I kind of combine it with NBA Jam, but in NBA Jam, if you hit 3 baskets in a row, your character is officially on fire, and then they do crazy dunks and backflips and cartwheels, and there's flames shooting out of the basketball, and there's loud noises and flashing lights. So instead of you need to be perfect, like let's just try to get on fire. If you can do something 3 days in a row, like congrats, you're on fire. And then as long as you keep doing it, you remain on fire. And that's awesome. And you're just trying to collect, total days on fire, let's say, for that month. And if you miss a day, okay, no big deal. Like life happens. Your dog threw up. Your kid got sick and had to stay home. Like that doesn't make you a bad person. That's just life. So just 3 days. Get your 3 days going again, and bam, you're right back on fire. We have other clients that will have this jar on their desk, and whenever they complete a task, they drop a marble in the jar, and each marble represents them completing a task. And they can then look back and it's like, oh, I only journaled 3 times this month, or oh, I only got to work out 5 times because it's the holiday season and I had so many Christmas parties to get to with my kids or whatever. And they can then look at that jar and realize like, hey, I might not be perfect, but I did do all of these things. And it's a great reminder that like, no, you can just do it today. Like that's totally fine. It doesn't matter that there's no streak. It doesn't matter that you haven't been perfect. Perfection is a trap, and it's a fool's errand. So instead, we're just going to add stuff up. And if we can, let's try to get on fire and have some fun with it.
There is so much good stuff in that. Now, I know the power of a streak because I still remember when my girlfriend ended her snap streak with all of her med school friends. I think it was at like 1,000 days or something like that. And it was like, oh my God, what the hell just happened?
They don't know what to do with themselves probably afterwards, right?
Yep. And I'm like, honestly, I'd be a little bummed too. That's a long streak. But
it is. And it works so great right up until it doesn't. And then the second it's broken, it's devastating. And like I said, I meditated every day for 6 months. I had a Wordle streak for 27 days. And then I missed a day and I was like, never mind, not doing it again. I don't think I've opened Wordle since then. So streaks can be great for you and they're great for certain people. But for many, it's not the right strategy because your only option is perfection. And then anything other than perfection is complete letdown.
100%. But the upside is, though, I remember in NBA Jams, it didn't take much to get another streak going. Like a couple of days and you're heating up. A few days. Now, exactly. I also love the fact that you're very like brutally honest about the fact that when you come up short with things like setting habits. And what have you found for yourself and for clients when it comes to habit formation? Because we know that's the hardest thing to do. What are some simple things that you've done that you struggled to do in the like at one point, and then you made one little tweak, and then all of a sudden you made it happen?
Yeah. Well, so I think about habit building from like one level even higher than what are the tactics or the behaviors required. Uh, I the thing that we hear more than anything in our coaching program is clients saying, "Hey, I'm sorry about this week, but don't worry, next week things get back to normal." And like, don't worry, I'm sorry, like this week was really bad, but next week or next month things slow down. Change finally starts to happen when you start to accept that like your quote unquote normal is actually not normal. And there is no like this thing that you're hoping to get back to, or this beautiful existence in the future in which your schedule is perfectly aligned and your kids get to school on time, and your spouse does a great job taking out the trash, or is a an equal partner in carrying that invisible load. Whatever it may be, like that future is is probably non-existent. So if that's the case, like what is the reality in which you live now? And forgive yourself for not being perfect with your habits, or that you missed a day, or that this week went poorly. I think it's really easy to kind of just continue to foist all of our hopes and dreams onto future us when all the stars have aligned. And instead, if we can just accept the reality, like, yeah, life is chaos. We there are other human beings in my life, and I have a job and hobbies and friends and all of these things. Like, accept that chaos as normal. And if you can find a ways to make some progress amidst the chaos, you're like starting to develop that resiliency, that ability to adapt when things are thrown your way. That you're like, I've been dealing with this chaos all along. And then if the stars do happen to align next week for whatever reason, you're going to feel like a superhero and you can make tons of progress. But when things revert back to the inevitable chaos that currently exists, you're going to make more progress during those times, and you get really good at becoming consistently or inconsistently consistent, right? And when you can develop that, where it's like, hey, I worked out twice this week, but that's so much better than not working out at all. Or I half-assed my workout today because I was just exhausted and Starbucks screwed up my coffee order. Like, that's great. Like, congratulations, you did it still qualifies as a workout. We help people like change their definition of workout. We help people not beat themselves up, and we help them realize that like, no, like this is normal. Like the thing that you're continually comparing yourself against is like an idealized version of reality that doesn't actually exist. So like, let's exist in this reality, and then let's figure out what we can do with these things. It probably means scaling back our ambitions. It probably means focusing on fewer things, taking time for yourself, but also like by doing that counterproductive or counterintuitively, like you'll probably end up actually making progress faster because you're not spinning your wheels in 6 different places. You're like actually making progress on 1 or 2.
I am so happy you said that, because I know that social media paints this image where it's like, if you're not doing 10,000 things correctly, then you just don't want it bad enough, right?
That hurts my heart. Hurts my heart. Where it's like, what do you like? You just gotta want it more, and it's like you're telling that to like a single mom with 3 jobs. Like, do you think she doesn't know that she like? Of course, she wants to be motivated and excited about exercise. Like, her reality is just chaos. Like, you also don't need to make her feel badly that she doesn't have time to do many of these other things, or just physically doesn't have the bandwidth to process it or to deal with it, or the emotional like the emotional bandwidth to say like, I can't deal with all of this crap and then also have to feel bad because some motivational speaker on Instagram is telling me that I don't want it bad enough. Like, man, go to hell. Like,
Yeah.
So that's the place I like to sit, is like, hey, like, it's okay. Like, we're human, and those people don't even probably practice what they preach. So you can stop listening to that and stop letting them make you feel bad about yourself. That's completely unhelpful.
100%. Now, I like to go back to what you said about bandwidth, because I know, like, when it comes to that, like capacity, another word for that that I use a lot, like, what are some strategies that you have for people? Because I know, especially in today's day and age with the work demands that some places put on their employees, it's kind of tough making time with family, with a million other responsibilities. What are some strategies you've like used with clients that has helped lighten the load maybe a little bit, or make it a little bit more flexible so they can get the job done?
Yeah, there's a great book by, I think it's Anne Helen Peterson. I hope I get the name right. I believe it's Anne Helen. But the book is called, I think it's called Burnout. And it's about the quote unquote burnout generation, and it's people in their, the us millennials, or people just, Gen X, millennials, etc., and the environment in which we exist, where job security is less than, back in the day where you just get your one job and there'd be a pension, and childcare was something that was not nearly as expensive as it is today. So it's a really challenging environment, and we're also the same generation that spent a lot of money on college, and many of us are still paying back student loans, and often for degrees that we're not actually using.
Right here.
Exactly. Yep. And it's like, we were kind of told that like this was the path to these, and that turned out to not be the case. So like, yes, of course, like we are burned out. It's a systemic problem, and it requires so much change. Now, in it, that aside, here's what we do with Nerd Fitness. We're big fans. Everybody often thinks of their diet and nutrition like a light switch. It's either on, I'm on a diet, I'm doing keto, I'm doing Whole30, I'm on Weight Watchers, or I'm off. Oh, I'm being bad. It's the holiday season, so I'm gonna have my cheat meals this week, and they're on or they're off. And instead, we think of it more like a pressure gauge. So there's like different colors where that beautiful week when the stars align and your schedule is clear and your kids are healthy, that would be like a green week. But then as the dial starts to move, it might move into the yellow, and yellow is like, oh, I don't have time to do my full workout, but I can kind of do a little bit of my workout. Then it moves into orange, and orange is like, I am kind of hanging on. It's a rough week. Somebody quit at the restaurant I work at, and I have to pull double shifts. Or it's it's red. That's like, okay, our babysitter quit, or I got fired, and essentially the red is the. Speaking of on fire, this is the meme of the dog sitting there with the fire around him saying, "This is fine." This is the other kind of on fire, which is not good. That's when you're in the red zone and like things are bad. So we actually we have this app at Nerd Fitness where if you're a coaching client, your coach, you work with your coach ahead of time. Like, hey, when a good week is, what does my workout looks like when it's green, and then what does a workout look like when it's in the orange, yellow, red, etc. And when the client wakes up, they can look at their app from their coach, and they can say like, today is an orange day, and there's a little pressure gauge button, and they click that, and it scales everything back to change your definition of completed my workout today. So if you're like, my normal workout is I strength train, I do, I'm working on squats, and I'm trying to get my first pull up, and I then do some cardio and a little bit of yoga, or what, it's like, this is a 45-minute workout. But things are really busy today. You hit the button and it's like, okay, instead, we are just going to do the yoga workout at home, and we're going to go for a walk with our kids. Like, we like to, come up with the thing ahead of time. It's like, hey, things are great now. Next week, things are going to be chaos for you. So when that happens, let's pre-make the decision of how we're going to scale things back. So then you don't feel badly about quote unquote half-assing your workout. That's not true at all. What you are doing is completing a full workout. You've just changed the definition of what workout is. And that workout might be something that's like, I put on shoes and went for a 5-minute walk. Like, congratulations, workout complete. That is your definition of the workout for today. Anything to keep you thinking in the right mindset and not letting that negative thought in your head kind of start to beat you up and saying, like, oh, you don't even, you're not able to stick with something. It's like, no, that's not the case. Like, you can, it just requires a changing of definition. And that's the type of stuff that like we really try to focus on, is like finding that right balance between pushing you so that you're making meaningful progress, but also having that scaling abilities to make it manageable so that when life is chaotic, which is 95% of the time, you can still manage to get some stuff done.
Love that. I mean, I think a lot of people do get caught up on if I'm not doing the plan that was written out 6 weeks in advance, if I'm not doing it to a T with the right percentages, I don't want it enough. I just can't get it. I can't get the results that I want. And with your clients, what have you seen as far as results wise when they follow this, like more of an auto-regulated, I guess, approach where it's like, we'll give what we have rather than pushing it pedal to the metal regardless of feeling.
Sure. I mean, it's permanent progress. It's not we've had so many clients that have come to us, and I'm sure you have as well, where they're like, my mom put me on Weight Watchers when I was 14, and I've been yo-yo dieting my entire life. Or I keep convincing myself to run a 5K, and then I get halfway through couch to 5K, and then I give up. And then I get halfway through couch to 5K, and I give up. And I get halfway through Whole 30, and then it's Taco Tuesday, and I had a bad day at work, so I ate tacos, and then I'm a bad person, so I had to quit Whole 30. It's like, okay, those all or nothing strategies seem to not be working for you, and it doesn't appear that you actually enjoy running. So why don't we just stop the couch to 5K? Carbs are delicious, so let's find a way to keep them a part of your nutritional strategy because they make life worth living. And let's, instead of going 4 steps forward, 4.5 steps back, let's instead do like 2 steps forward, and then we're going to tread water. Like, we're just going to do the bare minimum to draw our line in the sand or drop our anchor and say, like, this is where we're staying. And then when we can make progress, we're going to make a tiny bit more progress. So our success, I mean, I would say it probably takes longer, but certainly lasts. Is it's not a 30-day transformation. It's not a 90-day shred. It's like, it's the rest of your life that we're kind of thinking about. So we're providing with the building blocks and the foundational steps to not only think about how to eat, but like how to think about eating, and how to think about your nutrition, and how to think about your relationship with the voice in your head. All of those things is like so important to us. So we've had some unbelievable success stories. People have lost hundreds of pounds, and we've also had stories where people have gone from completely sedentary to running marathons, or people have dealt with eating disorders to now having a healthy relationship with food and getting their first pull up and falling in love with strength training. We really try to tailor it to each individual person. So that success and the transformations are both inside and out. And they might not be the previously slightly overweight person goes to totally shredded. That's perfectly fine, but I don't think that represents the 70+% of America that is, really struggling with the abundance of food and unhealthy food and food deserts and all of this stuff. So I'm really proud of how we help people and the way that we provide them with the tools to, like, this is a lifelong change and making it stuff that feels totally manageable for them.
Hell yeah. Because I'm very glad that you brought that up. It's that 70% of people that are getting lost kind of in the shuffle of the messaging really out there when it comes to nutrition and fitness, because we're all caught up in what are the bodybuilders doing? What are the athletes doing? And it just creates this mess of what is best for the person in front of us, right?
Yeah, well, not only that, but I think especially for those people in the fitness industry, we were talking earlier about you just got to want it more. Like, I don't think humans are any different now than they were 100 years ago. 100 years ago, there was only 10% obesity, and now there's, or 10%, overweight, and now it's 70% overweight. Like, we're not biologically any different. Like, the environment has changed, and it's so difficult to lose weight, especially in the environment, and depending on your socioeconomic status, it's so complicated, and there's so much more to it than just like, oh, just eat less. Like, yes, the science of the math of weight loss has been settled. It's caloric deficit, but there's hormones, and there's your crappy boss, and how good cake is. Like, there's so many things. It's so multifaceted that it really, like, it hurts when you just see people that are just like shaming, like, for the way that they eat, and it's like there's something so much deeper going on here than just like people can't control themselves. It's like the environment, like, I guess we're not any different. So in that, Lou, like you said, like that 70% or the people, there's a percent certainly that has been left behind. But I think maybe even worse are the people that are trying and have tried everything and just can't get it to stick. And like, I don't think it's their fault. I think because they're presented with like really unhealthy diet options from influencers or people that are like, oh, you just need to like you just have to drink cayenne lemon pepper water and like do this cleanse, and like they do that and they're like, weird, like I just feel terrible and I didn't actually lose weight and change my life, like I must be a failure. No, like there is so much bad information out there, plus like the physiological elements of like weight loss is so ingrained in us as like a species that like, man, it's so difficult. And I feel badly. And that's like the group of people that I just want to hug and be like, hey, like it's not your fault, but we're gonna see if we can figure this out. We're gonna figure it out together, and we're gonna find ways to make this stick in a way that doesn't suck for you. Because like, yeah, keto might make you lose weight, and for some people listening, maybe they went keto and they loved it. Great, like it helped you get into a calorie deficit and you lost weight. That's awesome. For 99.9% of the planet, like it's a miserable way to exist, and not what's the word? Not sustainable. So it's like, let's find the sustainable strategies that make you feel good about yourself and build us some momentum so that once we get past these initial things, like we can get to the point where this doesn't feel like you're pushing a boulder uphill every day. It can start to feel a little bit more effortless.
Yes, that's where the secret sauce is. I know we've talked about it on this podcast many times, but it's like, what is actually enjoyable and easy? If we can achieve that, that's great. But if we can't get there, what's the closest thing to that still gets us moving in the right direction? Now,
yep, absolutely.
When it comes to people that come into Nerd Fitness, what are some starting some starting things that you get them going on that usually get them going in the right direction and set a good foundation?
I mean, I think the biggest one, so we have a free, Facebook group community that is shockingly like the most, the things on the internet can be pretty combative. And the Nerd Fitness community, we call ourselves the Rebellion, in paying homage to Star Wars. But you join the Rebellion. We have a free Facebook group. It's so unbelievably
be in the show
supportive.
Notes, guys. So go ahead and join it right now.
Check it out. I write a free newsletter. It comes out every Monday. That is not just about how to do push-ups or how to eat vegetables, but mostly it's about like how to live better. This past week I was talking about Swedish death cleaning, which is like, what the heck is that? It's like this interesting book I read about how to prepare your house in case, when eventually you're checking out of Hotel Earth, your loved ones don't have to deal with all of your stuff. So I was like, hey, like this is a really interesting book. Audience, sending it out to the newsletter. Here's why I think we should all pick one thing physical from our lives that we can donate to some place that needs it. And also like, let's pick some mental baggage that we're carrying that we can, do some death cleaning around too. So I try to write across a wide variety of things, but really try to get you to entertain you first and foremost, but secondly, like get you to think a little bit differently about stuff. So I'd say join the newsletter, free Facebook group are just the great places to start. As far as philosophy goes, we're big fans of walking. Like there's very little, I can't remember who said it, but something like, I can't promise walking will solve all of your problems, but I can promise you'll never go on a walk and come back and say like, I wish I hadn't done that. Like going for a 5-minute walk is just a great place to start. I've probably written 1,000 free articles at Nerd Fitness on every topic under the sun. I mean, backed by science, often reviewed by registered dietitians or people with PhDs in exercise physiology. Like really have tried to nail the science so that when you're coming to Nerd Fitness, you're getting just really high quality information. There's no ads on the site. So like I don't promote supplements. There's no product, like we have a coaching program and we have a free Facebook group and we have a cool habit app. Like that's it. And you can just read all the free stuff and join the group and that's totally fine. So philosophy wise, it's like go for a walk, find a vegetable that you actually enjoy eating. Like let's start with like the super basics.
Yep.
And then it's like we're gonna figure out what your goals are. Like what is it that gets you, why did you come here in the first place? And like once you have that kind of a big why, is it to motivate your kids or to see what you're capable of? Or maybe you just got out of an abusive relationship and you're starting to date again and you want to feel better about yourself. Like whatever it may be, like that's awesome. We're here for you. And let's get started with some basics. And we will, like I said, start with the walk and then start to read some articles at Nerd Fitness and see which of these maybe jump out at you. And then over time, if there's anything else we can help with, the nerds are ready, willing, and able to help.
That is awesome. That is awesome. And for anybody who really loves seeing Lord of the Rings references and things like that and Star Wars and things, it breaks up a lot of the consistent monotony that we see in the fitness space of just the dry information where it's like, all right, this much protein, this many workouts. Like we need a little flavor in there.
Yeah, well, there's plenty of people that do that stuff, and it's really good info.
Yeah.
But I'm speaking specifically to a community of people that is underserved, typically in the health and fitness space. Don't feel at home at a gym, don't resonate with Instagram models, or will never walk into a CrossFit. No problem. Instead, let's learn about Harry Potter and the Sorting Hat and how we can think about nutrition from the perspective of, when you strength train, the calories you consume could be more likely to go towards rebuilding muscle than they would be storing fat. Just like the Sorting Hat in Harry Potter. It's like, it's ridiculous, but I love coming up with dumb analogies that people will never forget. Like that's I started early on as a trainer and very quickly learned that like what I truly enjoyed was the written word and just like writing and coming up with the corniest sentence that makes me laugh, that like presents a fitness lesson or a nutrition lesson or a behavior change lesson in a way that people will remember and also make them laugh and say like, good God, that Steve guy is corny as hell. Like that's what I'm going for. That's what I love. So like I started as a trainer, very quickly shifted into this writing and have been primarily focused on just writing and trying to come up with clever ways to help people in a unique way pretty much ever since.
Yeah. Well, that's the stuff that stands out and has the most impact at the end of the day. Anybody that can resonate and feel like it connects to them, that's going to do so much good in the world. And I think we need more of it. And honestly, now I'm thinking of references for my own email that, guys, just a heads up, anybody on mine, it's going to get a little bit different going forward. I'm excited.
Just have fun with it, right? Like what are we doing here? We all know we need to eat protein and vegetables are good for us. And yeah, we probably shouldn't have pizza every day. Like we all know these things. So it's like deeply understanding where somebody is coming from, what their pain points are, what their home life is like, what their hopes, dreams, and fears are with their kids or their relationship or their, are they going to therapy? What is their relationship with food? Like all of these things really color who we are and how we decide to, or subconsciously make the decisions that we do. So for us, it's like, man, like life is short. And I honestly, like I started writing this way because I was bored to hell writing about like the mechanics of a push-up. It's like, I got to find a way to make this interesting to me. Otherwise, like I'm going to fall asleep. So like every article is full of GIFs and memes and, often fun, comically, like people initially on were like, hey, nobody can read long content. Like, it's just not, it's like, you need to write shorter stuff. I was like, well, maybe, but also like the people that really like this stuff are really going to like it. And, we get 500,000 people a month. Go to nerdfitness.com. We have 150,000 people on the email list and 1,500 coaching clients. Really good at what we do. And we put our heart, soul, and everything into what we make and try to do it in a fun way because that's kind of what I got in this business in the first place for.
There we go. That in itself is just absolutely nuts, like numbers wise, just hearing all those numbers. And now when it comes to like the way that you prefer to serve people, that ways that you think are your superpowers, what are the big superpowers that you think I guess the right word would be like that you don't see enough of.
I think my personal superpowers, I think, are I am just a sponge for information. Like nothing makes me happier. I'll read 2 books a week, and they'll be like, the last 2 books that was like Swedish death cleaning, and then a book about Greek philosophy. But then the next book will be like this really deep psychological book about self-efficacy. It's like, oh, this is fascinating. Like, what lessons? How can I combine? So, like, nothing makes me happier than synthesizing like really obscure ideas and combining them into a way that gets people to say, like, huh, I never thought of it that way, or like, oh, that I'm never going to forget that. So, I love that. That's the battle that I will ride into battle for that every day. It's like, how can I take this complex topic
Yep.
and this really, really challenging element of human nature that is like, I was like Don Quixote tilting at windmills. Like, hey, it's like you're fighting a losing battle here, pal. I love it. That nothing makes me happier, and that's what I spend my time doing. It's what I'm doing when I post on social media. I want people to not feel alone in their disastrousness. If they feel like a dumpster fire, or if it's just like a chaotic mess, like, welcome to the club. Like, that's life, and we all do. And I don't want you to feel alone in that. So it's the empathetic, self-deprecating, corny humor mixed with the, hey, let's take this complex behavioral subject and and make it so much fun that people are excited to learn about it and will live their life a little bit differently.
Love that. And when we're talking about the books, especially the ones that you're diving into lately, do you have anything on your radar that you're excited about, or something that you just started reading that you're like, oh, I can't, like, you can't put the book down?
I'll share. So there's a book that's influenced me more than any other book, probably in the past decade. And well, so right now I'm reading Circe by Madeline Miller. It's a reimagining of the Greek legend of Circe and Odysseus, and it's fantastic. So I love reading fiction, but then I also read some really great nonfiction. There's a great book by Oliver Burkeman called 4,000 Weeks, and the subtitle is Time Management for Mortals. And I think that book has probably influenced me more than anything else. It's really well done and shows that, like, the greatest trick the internet ever pulled on us, or social media ever pulled on us, was that it convinced us that we could have it all and do it all. And the reality is, like, it's just not possible. There's too much to do. There are too many things to see, and too many places to go, and too many friends to want to spend time with, and too much time with our, we have to spend time with our family and our job or our second job. And you then feel badly that you're not as fit as this one person. But then the next person you scroll to on social media, you're not as rich as that person. And then you scroll to the next person. You're like, I'm not as beautiful as that person. And then you scroll to the next person, and it's your friend who's on a vacation in Cabo. And you're like, I'm not, I wish I was in Cabo. And like, your brain kind of combines all of these individual elements of these people into like this one Frankenstein that you're comparing yourself against. And it's like you're going to fight a losing battle all the time. So social media has been great for some reasons, but as Oliver points out in his book, we used to keep up with the Joneses was like you would compare yourself to the people on your street. Now, because of the internet, you compete with the digital Joneses, which means anytime you reach any level of success, or any level of fitness, or any level of happiness, there is just a whole new group of people to compare yourself against, and then another group of people, and then another group of people, and it just never stops. So his book is so great about teaching you to kind of let go. And paradoxically, by letting go and letting yourself off the hook from being perfect and not expecting yourself to be able to do it all, it makes you be so much better at prioritizing and saying, if I can't do everything, what are the few things that actually matter that I do want to make progress on? And how can I realistically make progress with those things? So I've probably read it 2 or 3 times and have recommended it to everybody. But it's just a fantastic book that and he's British, so it's full of like really dry British humor and dry, self-deprecating British humor, which is just my cup of tea personally. So I loved it.
I'm gonna have to get that on. Hopefully, it's on Audible because that's like my
I'm sure
jam.
it is. Yep.
I'm not a much of a physical book reader, but I'll listen to like libraries full.
I'm sure he did. And if not, then he actually did a course on Sam Harris's Waking Up. So Sam Harris's meditation podcast. I think there was like a whole course within that by Oliver, but I'm guessing this book is on Audible. It came out, I think, in 2020, but it kind of like built this groundswell of movement when it came out. It's done really well. It's grown, and just anytime I get a chance to talk about it, I'm like, ooh, does anybody want to talk about 4,000 Weeks?
Hell yeah.
It's great.
Hey, I mean, that and your book are now on the to-do list. So I'm going to have you back for a part 2 and then be like, all right, let's talk about these books.
Love it.
Awesome. So now I wanted to get a couple of good questions out of the way, because I do have to scratch that itch as far as nerdiness and geekiness. And the start that I wanted to kick this off with is, what is your opinion on the difference between a nerd and a geek? Because right before hopping on, me and my girlfriend were having this discussion. She's like, I'm the nerd, you're the geek. And I'm like, explain. So
that's funny.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, there's this great video by Will Wheaton, who was a character on Star Trek way back in the day, and kind of became a representative of nerd culture. Has this great definition of nerd, and essentially it's like, when somebody calls you a nerd, like what they're really saying is like, hey, you really love this thing very deeply. And when for me, like with nerd fitness, it's like, oh, you really care about something. I don't necessarily nerd out about fitness. I am a nerd who happens to enjoy fitness, but like I nerd out about movie culture and books and going to concerts and studying set lists, and I nerd out about these other things. So when I think of nerd, it's like, oh, we also have a lot of people that visit Nerd Fitness and they're like, well, I'm not really a nerd, but I really like your stuff. And then you talk to them for a little more and they're like, oh, by the way, like I actually have this rock collection. Or like, oh, like I'm actually like a huge birder. And it's like, you're a nerd, by the way. Like I mean that as endearingly as possible. What I mean is like, you have a topic that if somebody else came up to you and just started talking about it, you would be like, oh man, like, ooh, can we,
how much time do we have?
Can we talk a little bit more about that? Like I have dozens of those topics where if somebody brings it up in a conversation, I'll be like, okay, wait a second, hold on. Everybody else leave us alone. We're going to go in this corner.
What is one of those?
Lately, I'd say there's a show on FX called The Bear.
Oh my God. I love that show.
It's so good. And I would talk to you right now for an hour and a half about The Bear if we could.
Did you ever work in a restaurant?
I did. I started as a dishwasher and then I was a busboy.
Okay. Yeah, I was a waiter.
So I never made it to I did have to like peel potatoes. So when I was the dishwasher, and I lasted as a dishwasher for like 3 weeks, and I was like,
that's the worst job.
I think I was 14. Yeah, I was 14. I was like, boy, this is thankless. So I have unbelievable respect for people that can that do that. So anyways, I moved up to busboy, and I was a busboy for quite a while. A handful of summers. But watching The Bear is like, as much as I've told people to watch or to pick up 4,000 Weeks, is like, it's been a week, so it's time for me to tell everybody on the internet that you should be watching The Bear. It's about this Michelin star chef who has to return to his brother's restaurant in Chicago and try to save it from financial ruin. So the first season is very contained about that restaurant, and then the second season really expands and digs into each of the characters. The first season was so good that I was worried about the second season, and then the second season ended up being even better. And one of the episodes in particular, not the Christmas episode. I was
going to say the Christmas one.
After the Forks episode with Richie was my favorite hour of television, maybe ever.
That's when he was at the Michelin star learning.
Correct. Okay. Yep.
That was
and he starts wearing suits, and it's just like, oh, it's everything about that episode, the way it's done. I mean, just the craftsmanship. Like, I will nerd out about that, and and the care that they go through to create these meals for people that they're not even seeing on the other side of the restaurant. They're working terrible hours. They do it because they love it, and like they don't know anything. I'm just like, I am in awe of, like, I respect that craft. I consider myself like I'm a writer, so like I agonize over every word in every sentence, and I'm like, I can see that in somebody crafting the perfect meal or creating this seven course dining experience. Like, I just love that. So The Bear, everybody watch it. It's on Hulu.
So
it
good.
is delightful. The characters are amazing. Oh, and so the character Fack, the larger gentleman, Fack, he's like a famous celebrity chef in Canada. And he was never acted before. And then they just like put him on camera, and he was like, oh my God, this guy is amazing.
What
and he
possessed
is so
them to take
funny.
What possessed them to take the only like legitimate chef, and we're going to make him like the maintenance guy.
The maintenance guy. He's so funny. Just like, I mean, there's so much of that show that I'm like, I'm just thankful that it exists. I'm sure it was one of those shows that probably in the higher interest rate environment that we exist today and consolidation, that show probably never would have got made. I'm thankful that it came out when it did, and it's going to get another season because it is just delightful. So yeah, that's like, I could, I could do that, like what we just did, but I could do that for half an hour or an hour about 100 different things. Like, that's what I love to do. And that's when I connect and feel connection with people. So that's what I nerd out about. So bringing it all the way back to your first question, I think nerding, like, you nerd out is like you nerd out about a topic, and that can be anybody. And a nerd is a term of endearment. I think geek to me feels a little more, you maybe a little bit more socially awkward. But I think both are totally fine things.
Yeah.
And I'm proud. Clearly, I named my business Nerd Fitness, and like I mean that as proudly as possible. So I think you can like geek out too. I think they're kind of interchangeable. The fact that you're asking me this, I'm now thinking like, how would I properly delineate between the two? I don't know. What was the what were you guys saying?
Because she was saying like on the intellectual side of things, she blows me out of the water. But then on like passion stuff, like where I will go all in on like stuff that's deemed nerdy, like that's like geek level, and I'm like, okay,
I could see that. I'm sure like there's definitely like a Venn diagram where those two overlap, and where somebody that nerds is a nerd that does geek out about things, and I can see like nerd being, I guess, probably more focused on the intelligent aspect of things. But for me, it's just like, man, I love to nerd out. So that's kind of the way that I think about it.
And how you said too, I think that there's like a sense of pride with like nerd, because like I guess the movies like Revenge of the Nerds created like a movement where it's like, we are here, this is us, like we are strong.
Sure. I mean, and also like I bought nerdfitness.com in 2007. Like being nerdy and fit wasn't cool then. Like Marvel hadn't, like, I think Iron Man maybe had just come out, but like Disney hadn't bought Star Wars, Disney hadn't bought Marvel yet. Being nerdy wasn't cool. I was just a dork that played a lot of video games. And I Googled nerd and fitness and nothing popped up. So that's kind of how it started.
Yeah. And that was like the heyday. I kind of miss when Marvel was at that point where it's like, I'm actually starting to get excited when things come out. Like it's not bang, 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 bang. So I hear that it's going back.
Hopefully they can get it back.
I hear it's going back to that, but
I hope so.
Out of the Marvel universe, I got to ask, what's your favorite superhero? If you had to pick one, I see the shield behind you, so I have an idea.
Yeah, it's sure. I mean, my name is Steve, and Captain America's real name is Steve Rogers. He was a scrawny nerd that wanted to inspire others through his actions, and that is exactly me. So I was also a scrawny nerd. I didn't take any super soldier serum. I am, I just aged normally. I am not as cool as Captain America. I have not fought Nazis in 1940s Germany, but I do like to inspire people, and I am corny as hell and feel like a dinosaur whenever I go on the internet. So I probably relate the most to Steve Rogers.
Gotcha. And I mean, trap bar deadlifts are basically super serum anyway. So, I mean, it works. But yeah, I'm like trying to hold back a little bit because I have so many more nerdy questions to ask, but I feel like everybody listening right now, I don't want them to burn out on like the topics that are not fitness or nutrition related. So I'll leave it on this. We have one final question for every single guest, and it's a question that the previous guest left for them.
Oh boy.
Okay. Now, before we dive into that one, what's your question for the person after you? It can be anything. It doesn't have to be fitness, nutrition, business. It could literally be anything.
Okay. Boy, that's a tricky one. Any question? Boy, when you give me no constraints, see, there's a quote, there's like constraints breed creativity. When you tell a creative person, hey, you can just do whatever you want, they will never get any work done. They need some constraints. So
that's
all right, let me think here. Okay, here's the question. What's the last thing you did purely for the fun of it?
Ooh, I love that. Okay. That's a really good one. And I'm really I like this one that I'm about to ask you too, because this one comes from Sam Forget, who was on prior to you. And he asked, what is the single biggest thing you want to accomplish in the next 12 months, personal or professional?
Well, there's one. I can't really talk about it, but I kind of can. So, I have spent the past 12 months and we'll spend the next 12 months working on a project that may or may not be book shaped, that I can't officially talk about, but
it may have words.
I am excited and we'll be talking about it more officially in 2024. But it's something I'm very proud of and excited about and can't wait to share more of. So that's the thing that my big goal would be to finalize what that project looks like.
Vague and mysterious. I love it. Cannot wait.
I mean, it's not that. You could probably figure it out, but that's about as much as I'm allowed to say.
I'm just going to go on a limb and assume that there's pages to flip through, and it might have hard and soft cover, possibly.
It's very possible.
Okay. I think I'm in the ballpark. All right, cool. Well,
I think so too.
Before we give away the secret, let's let the people know where to find you, because I know that there's definitely some people listening that are like, all right, this guy Steve, I want to read his stuff. I want to see his stuff on Instagram. Like, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm Steve Kamb. I'm pretty easy to find. It's SteveKamb. I'm mostly on Instagram and Threads. I'm actually kind of enjoying Threads. Surprisingly, to me, it kind of feels like Twitter, but from a decade ago, where it's just a bunch of like theater and drama kids and like us, like creative dorks, like kind of hanging out. So that's where I've been, crafting my word. And then also I'm on Instagram. We also, Nerd Fitness is on Instagram, YouTube. I have 1,000 free articles. Like if you want to know how to read or how to do something fitness related, I bet if you Google nerd fitness and that subject, will show up. So I write the free newsletter every Monday at Nerd Fitness. And I would say, like, sign up for the newsletter and then follow me on Instagram or Threads. And I promise to entertain you, and you will also accidentally learn stuff too.
Sounds like a good deal. And so everybody doesn't have to go searching. It's all going to be in the show notes. Just click away, get on that newsletter, follow Steve, and you will not regret it at all. And for anybody who found anything in this and really resonated with it, or if you have like a nerd in your life that you're like, they need to hear this, send it their way. That's the only way the podcast grows, and I will be deeply appreciative. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for listening all the way through, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your week. I will see you later.